Good afternoon, everyone. It's July 18th, 2024, and this is the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting in Chatham, Mass. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who'd like to listen to the meeting while in progress may do so by calling 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 920-882-240#, or join the meeting online via the Microsoft Teams link on the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. I'm going to tell you the procedural steps, but first I'll say that everybody is well advised to shut off any cell phones, watches, anything that makes a noise. Please shut it off. Thank you. Procedural steps. The roll call of all board members. We will do that now. Dave Veach?
Yes, David H. Veach, and
Oh, you approve
I approve of
this
the
method
format.
of meeting?
Yes.
Ed Acton, I approve.
David S. Nixon, I approve.
Steve?
Steve DeBoer approves.
And Lee?
Lee Hovey approves.
Randy Potash, I also approve. And now we ask if anyone participating via the call on the phone give the last 4 digits of their phone number and identify their name. First thing we do is the hearing notice is read by staff. Sarah Clark to my right. You or your representative will present your application. Anyone in favor of the application may speak for up to 5 minutes. Then I will read and summarize all letters received by the board. Anyone against the appeal or application will have some time to speak, up to 5 minutes, and if they have any questions during that period as well. The applicant may then rebut testimony. Board members will direct their questions to anyone present. Then we hear any further information, close the public hearing, deliberate, and usually we vote on the appeal or application. All votes are taken by roll call, and at the end of the meeting, we will close via verbal confirmation and note the time of adjournment. Voting today will be David Veach, David Nixon, Steve DeBoer, Lee Hovey, and myself, Randy Potash. And with that, let's see, we don't have any minutes, so the first application will be 24-068.
Application number 20. Application number 24-068, Friendly Nominee Trust, care of James M. Norcross, Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 23 Mill Hill Lane, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16C, Block 22, Lot 6. The applicant proposes to change, alter, or expand a non-conforming dwelling and a non-conforming lot via the construction of a partial second floor and an addition. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located 18.3 feet from the road where a 25-foot setback is required and 6.6 feet from the northerly abutter. The proposed partial second floor addition will be non-conforming and that it will be located 10 feet from the road, 10 feet from the northerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,525 square feet, 17.4%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,750 square feet, 20%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 8,743 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw.
Attorney Norcross, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon. Jamie Norcross representing the Friendly Nominee Trust. There's been a couple issues that have come up at the very last minute for my client that are resulting in them looking at some small design changes. So we've asking if we could continue until September 12th. This is the next available meeting to make those revisions to the plans. And speaking with Leslie Schneeberger, the architect, she thinks that's plenty of time for her to be able to create the new plans and have those submitted in time for that meeting. So our request today, again, would be to continue until your September 12th meeting.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Dave Nixon?
Could you give us a clue as to the small changes or the small glitches or?
Sure. So I don't know, Sarah, do you have the elevation you could pull up would be helpful? So the changes, if you look at the photograph on the bottom, the south elevation, that's looking at the house, the front of the house, essentially. And so the proposals included doing that bump out on the far right-hand side. You see the door and the two windows and the small window above, the porch, and then the second story above the porch. And so they certainly want to go forward with the change on the furthest change on the right, that bump out. But the second story addition, their builder and the structural engineers raised some questions about whether or not that's going to be feasible or how difficult that's going to be structurally in order to do that change. So instead of doing that, they may look to bump out the section of the building on the left that you see a little bit.
Is that because of the age of the foundation or?
I believe that's part of it, and the fact that it's not going to connect all the way to on the left-hand side, they thought that might create some issues. So they're taking a hard look at that, and instead of going forward on this and perhaps getting approved but having to come back, we just thought it'd be best to get final plans that would make sense.
Does anyone else have any questions at all? No? I'll take a motion. David?
Yeah.
Or Dave?
I'll move to grant the request for continuance to September 12th.
I second that.
And how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Ed? Oh, yep.
Veach votes yes.
Steve?
Steve DeBoer votes yes.
I vote yes.
And as do I. It's
Great.
unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was 9/12?
Yep. Okay, next on our list is 162 Shore Road, C. Piper Realty. Mr. Litchfield, Sarah will read that application.
Application number 24-071, C. Piper Realty Trust, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owner of property located at 162 Shore Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16D, Block 15, Lot 29. The applicant proposes to change, alter, or expand nonconforming structures on a nonconforming lot via the partial demolition and relocation of the existing dwelling, relocation of the studio, and construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 1.5 feet from the northerly abutter. The existing garage is nonconforming in that it is located 5.2 feet from the northerly abutter, and the existing studio is nonconforming in that it is located 0.5 feet from the southerly abutter and 10 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District. The existing exterior mechanical system appliances are nonconforming in that they extend over the northerly and southern abutters' property lines. The proposed partial second floor addition will be nonconforming in that it will be located 10 feet from the northerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The relocated dwelling, now garage with one bedroom, will conform to all setback requirements. The proposed dwelling will be nonconforming in that it will be located 2.8 feet from the northerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The relocated studio will be nonconforming in that it will be located 7.1 feet from the southerly abutter, and the exterior mechanical appliance for this structure will be 6.4 feet from the southerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 3,201 square feet, 7.8%, and the proposed building coverage is 4,073 square feet, 9.9%, where 10% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it has 118.93 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required. The property contains 41,102 square feet of buildable upland in an R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protected bylaw.
Welcome, Mr. Litchfield, Attorney Litchfield.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Tom and Michelle Jennings. Tom is in the rear in the blue shirt and all the way back, but unfortunately Michelle could not be with us today. But Tom McNeil, a principal of Hutker Architects, is, and his associate Jonathan Fox is with us online. Excuse me. Our design team includes Wilkinson Ecological, Ryder and Wilcox, and Stephanie Sequin from Ryder and Wilcox may be joining us virtually. Joe Waller of Simpson Landscape Architects, all of whom have been involved in this property over the last couple of years in developing what we believe you will find to be appropriate plans for 162 Shore Road. We've been before the Conservation Commission 2 or 3 times, the Historical Commission a couple of times, for multiple but successful hearings with both of them. Frankly, we received words of praise for the sensitivity of the plans and our responsiveness to suggested modifications. Given the location and the history of the structures on the site, both of those boards took a strong interest in and an extensive review of the plans. And with the exception of the septic system to be reviewed by the Board of Health, this is our last stop. We, of course, always save the best for last. That's why we're here with you. But the degree of scrutiny is appropriate for this location. This isn't just any site. 162 Shore Road is sui generis. It's known as Sur-Mer, it's known as the Old Weller property, or the Windmill House. It's known by all of those names and probably others. And the antique salt box, which we're proposing to move and restore, is known in the historic community as the Joshua Burse House. That's sort of a segue into a little bit of the history of the property, because I think that's important. The house in question was built about 1800 down on Water Street in the village and was moved to Shore Road around 1913. Similarly, the windmill, which we're seeking to move out of the Coastal Conservancy District setback and further back from harm's way, hasn't always been there either. It was originally built about 1850 down in Cockle Cove and moved at some point to Chatham, which I'm told is on Cape Cod. I've never heard of it, but I'm told it's in the Falmouth area. Then it was returned to Chatham about 100 years ago. According to the Historical Commission, the windmill was, for a number of years, used as a tool shed. Tom and Michelle do not have that in mind for it. And while it may not matter to this appeal, there was, until about 40 years ago, a third house on the property. A house that was built around 1800 next door to the town office building downtown on Main Street. That house was relocated to Shore Road early in the last century, but was sold by former owners of this property and moved to Orleans about 45 years ago. In any case, while it is a vastly overused word in modern times, the word iconic has been ascribed to this property, to the windmill and to Sur-Mer generally, or at least it was when you could see the Joshua Burse House and you could see the windmill. That's no longer the case, but that is an important aspect of why we're here today, because we propose to make the Joshua Burse House the focus of the property for the neighborhood and for the many people who travel up and down Shore Road, historically known as the Boulevard, and to create and maintain public sightlines to the windmill and also to Chatham Harbor. We're all aware, or I think should be at least, of the loss of public views of the water over the years, and approval of this special permit with a condition which we're proposing will be a positive and important step toward maintaining views of the harbor and the windmill, and again, as relocated and shown there, making the Joshua Burse House the focal point of the property. We're proposing to move the windmill out of the Coastal Conservancy District setback, as I said, remove the many recent additions to the Joshua Burse House and relocate it as shown there, relocate the historic core of it at the top of the hill, again making it the focus of the property. And then to build a reasonable and appropriate family home for Tom and Michelle and their daughters. We'll be eliminating at least one nonconformity, reducing some others, and not exacerbating any. We're also, as I suggested, going to propose a condition, which I'll explain later, one which will, I think, make this a genuine improvement for the community as a whole. So what I'd like to do, if I could, is to turn this over to Tom McNeil, who can go over the goals that Tom and Michelle Jennings had in mind, and the plans that Hutker developed working with them and the others on the design team. Tom will present the plans, and then I'll go into the criteria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tom McNeil from Hutker Architects. And I'm just going to walk through the project a little bit and sort of how we have thought about the design. You can go to the next page, Jonathan. My colleague is on sharing screen here. So as you can see, the existing house and additions that were on the salt box are all, the majority of the structure is non-conforming on the north side of the property. And on the left side is Shore Road, which currently has a tall hedge and a couple trees that are planted there as well. And the windmill is right up against the edge of the property on the south end of the property. And you can see in this image the direction of the windmill blades are actually, you can see them right there. One thing we're proposing to do is rotate them so they are visible from Shore Road. Okay, you can move ahead, Jonathan. So what we wanted to do is preserve the salt box in the original form. Not only preserve it, restore it to something that is cherished by the community as best we can. So we stripped away many of the additions and things that were done over time to the original pure salt box form. So everything in red here is the removal of many of the additions and changes who've been changed. Some of it is partly original, but most of it has been changed and modified. The majority of the salt box, in fact, from the interior has been modified as well. So we want to restore it as best we can and relocate it to the front end of the property. The salt box is also something that we wanted to preserve, keep, and make and maintain visibility from both the water and from the road. Go to the next one, Jonathan. So this shows the two sections of the building that we're restoring and relocating. The salt box is moving from the red there up to the front end of the road. And what we'd like to do is sort of give that back to the community because so it's a cherished sort of historic building that is restored by Doug Whitla and put back to the community instead of what's there now, which is a tall row of hedges and a couple trees. And then we also want to pull it out of the coastal zone and the 100-foot buffer, as well as the windmill. You see the original location of the windmill. We want to pull it back from the coast to help preserve it, put it on a new foundation, and pull it out of the 50-foot buffer zone. If we go, you can go to the next one, Jonathan. And we also, you can go back, Jonathan. Thank you for the reminder. We're rotating the windmill blades. Right now, the way it's set up, the windmill blades are actually blocked by the structure, so they don't look like they operate. You can't physically rotate them. So we want to bring it to something that's more authentic looking. So we are rotating them, facing them towards Shore Road. This way, they'll actually look like they can physically turn. So this is a highlight of the footprint of the existing nonconformities, which are on the top. You can see the existing house and garage are right up against the 50-foot buffer zone, and the windmill is also almost right up against the coastal bank. So what we want to do is pull the windmill back out of the 50-foot buffer and pull the new house plan back out of the 100-foot buffer and improve the nonconformity. The footprint is about 747 square feet less than the current nonconformity. The setbacks are increased by from 18 inches to 2'9" on the north side. The windmill setback is increased right now from 6 inches to, we're proposing 7 feet. And the volume, in fact, it's not just footprint, but the physical volume of the nonconformity is getting reduced by 872 cubic feet. Go to the next one. So this just identifies how we've, the existing house and the new house, how we've pulled the, we've reduced the volume physically. And also the footprint is overall under the coverage requirement for the zoning requirements. It's under the 10% requirement. Go to the next one, Jonathan. So what does that mean and how does it feel? This is an example of the road right now as it sits. There's a 7 to 8 foot tall hedge on the property with 2 large trees behind it. We intend to remove the set of hedges, and Bill's going to share a little more about how we're going to do that and how we're going to support that with sort of some documentation to the proposed design, which is going to eliminate the hedge, expose the windmill, potentially open views up over the Roses of Sharon hedge on the right side, which is going to be kept lower, and on the left as well. So this really celebrates and brings the salt box, the historic structure, to the community, to the street, and that serves as a sort of a a token of the history of this place, and it's important to us and the owners to preserve that. Go to the next one, Jonathan. So this is on the north side of the property. If we go to the south, this is the current view. You're sort of looking directly at a hedge. And then if we go to the proposed view, we eliminate that hedge. We keep the plantings low along the street. We create an access way, a visual access to the windmill on this property. And you can see how the windmill blades are actually facing in this direction, so they're more visible from this side, and they're authentic in the fact that they can actually rotate. And the Roses of Sharon hedge on the right side are being kept down as well. From the beach, the house is made from shingles, white trim. The goal here is to have it blend into the coastline. We've broken the scale down into smaller forms, and the intent is to make it feel like a series of cottages that were added on over time. So each individual component isn't overly massive. We've separated them by a gap between the central section and the 2 sides to sort of emphasize that aesthetic. And I think so. This is a diagram. Tom and Michelle Jennings were happy to. They met with neighbors to make sure everyone was happy, and if there was any concessions or any changes that we could make, we worked with them and developed this plan. There's a zone in the front of the property which limits the height of the plant material to 5 feet high, and then the next from us benchmark, which is basically from the road, slightly different than the road, but very close to the road elevation. So it'll limit that height to 5 feet. Then the next zone is B. It limits to about 3.5 feet, and then zone C to about 1 foot. And the reason why it seems like it steps down is because it's from a benchmark elevation, not from the grade itself. So it stays pretty much flat across, no higher than 5 feet from the road. And it in fact slopes downward toward the property line to maintain perspective view down to the water. And with that, I can let Bill explain a little further the next parts.
Thank you, Tom. I'll go into the criteria and then talk more about the suggested condition as to adequacy of site, including building coverage and setbacks. Notwithstanding the slight shortage of frontage, we have multiple sideline and, as Tom indicated, coastal conservancy district nonconformities. But the site has been adequate for the house or houses and the windmill for the last 100 years. If you approve the special permit, as I trust you will do, you can do so based on the finding that the site is adequate for the preserved salt box and windmill, along with construction of a new family home. Coverage complies, setback encroachments are either eliminated or reduced. As the compatibility of size on the 3rd sheet of the handout that you have, The lots in the neighborhood vary considerably in size. Our lot is actually the largest in the neighborhood. It currently has coverage of 7.8% of the buildable upland, just 4.9% of the entire lot, and it has currently 3, down from 4 structures. It's in the mid-range of the gross floor area and has a relatively small living area. If you approve the special permit, again, as shown on the 3rd page of the handout, it will remain compatible, but the focus will now be on the salt box and the windmill. The new house will be located downhill and behind the salt box. The gross floor area is proportionate to the size of the lot. Coverage complies at 9.9% of buildable upland, 6.1% of the overall lot. The footprint, even with the salt box and the windmill, is smaller than that at 157 across the street or 168 next door. The latter lot being half the size of the locus of this property. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, there is none. The structures are being moved back from the shoreline. We're eliminating the Coastal Conservancy District nonconformity and also making it safer. We're reducing both the north and southerly sideline nonconformities, and coverage remains compliant, while others in the neighborhood are up to 15%, where 10% is what the maximum allowed. As to suitability of site, the site is certainly suitable for residential use, as it has been for the 100-plus years since the structures were moved there and expanded. There has been, as I indicated, extensive review by the Conservation Commission. We made very responsive changes to every suggestion that they made. The house itself is being completely removed from their jurisdiction. It's entirely out of the adjacent upland resource area, and the windmill is being moved out of the no disturb zone. Scale sighting mass views and vistas, or streetscape. There is, as you are all, I suspect, aware, a long history of views of the classic windmill and the salt box, and that came to an end maybe 10 years ago. Tom and Michelle had absolutely no involvement in that situation. But if you approve the special permit, sighting of the salt box and the windmill are significantly improved. The scale is appropriate. The main house is not particularly visible, but even from the water side, thinking about the view that the other Mr. Acton would have taken years ago, it has a small and appropriate view from the water. It's designed, as Tom indicated, to minimize scale. But the single most important reason to approve the special permit is restoration of views of the windmill, preservation of the salt box, and improvement of the streetscape. You have in front of you, I think it's the 4th sheet on your handout, some proposed conditions, and I will go through them with you so that Sarah doesn't have to read them later, or that some member of the board, assuming you adopt them, doesn't have to read them. In order to improve the public streetscape and enhance public and neighborhood views and vistas of Chatham Harbor and the historic salt box and windmill, Tom and Michelle agreed to the following as a condition of approval. 1, removing and not replacing the existing privet hedge and the 2 trees along the westerly street line, the Shore Road sign of the subject property. And as shown on the site plans that were up there earlier, the colored ones, which will be on file with the Board of Appeals, and we're asking to be incorporated by reference into the special permit. We will agree that in Zone A, closest to the street, the homeowner will maintain all plantings, vegetation to a height not more than 5 feet above a stake set elevation, which is 39.37. In Zone B, further toward the water, approximately as shown on those plans, the homeowner petitioner will maintain all plantings and vegetation to a height not more than 3.5 feet above the stake set. And then in Zone C, which is the pink area at the north and at the south, we'll maintain all plantings and vegetation starting at Zone B and moving downward to a height of not more than 3.5 feet, diminishing to a height at the westernmost facade of the proposed dwelling, the new home, not more than 1 foot above the stake set elevation. And along the southerly line, Zone C will remain at a level elevation not more than 1 foot above that height. Finally, we would ask that, of course, as is true of any condition that you impose, that it would maintain, that it would be in effect absent review by the board for the future, which we don't expect to request. With that condition, the town and the neighborhood have a significant improvement in views and vistas. The other criteria, compatibility of use, it's a residential use, town water, town sewer. The chair will read a letter from the health agent indicating that the septic system needs to be reviewed. It does. We already have in place a 5-bedroom restriction. The new system will be has been engineered and will be submitted to the Board of Health, assuming approval. There are no issues there. Traffic flow and safety is not significantly an issue, and I would ordinarily say no change. However, I will admit that this is and always has been a draw for photographers. And we cannot guarantee you, if you approve the special permit, that there won't be people taking pictures of what you've approved. In fact, I hope that does occur. So the question is, as you know, whether preserving the historic windmill and the classic salt box to be relocated to enhance the Shore Road and neighborhood streetscape with construction of a new home at the rear and largely below sight lines is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Tom and Michelle purchased the house next door at 154 Shore Road almost 10 years ago, and they showed their dedication to the neighborhood and its preservation by their success in preserving and restoring 154. Like most of us, they long admired Sir Mayor or the Weller property, and when it became available, they made a commitment to continue their efforts. Unlike some buyers, they never gave a second's thought to demolishing either of the historic structures. As Tom has indicated, preserving them was a goal from the start. Shore Road residents care deeply about their neighborhood. We all care about our neighborhoods, but they are not shy about opposing changes they find inappropriate, as some of you will recall from prior hearings. Here, Tom and Michelle worked extensively with their neighbors and their design team over the course of a couple of years to develop those plans, which I think you can find are sensitive to the site, which serve their needs, Tom and Michelle's needs, but also those of the neighborhood. That there is strong neighborhood support, and the chair will read letters, speaks to their success in developing appropriate plans and to the importance of this project. Coverage and height are below the limit. The nonconformities are decreased rather than increased. The main house is essentially without impact on the streetscape. There's nothing detrimental and certainly not substantially so. But I think those considerations, I think you can find that they pale before the positive, the gains for the neighborhood, the town, and the public in general for moving and preserving the antique house and the windmill, coupled with the condition mandating the preservation of the sightlines and the views of Chatham Harbor. The bylaw's purpose, as the chair often refers to the purpose of the bylaw, and she knows this, the bylaw's purpose is to encourage those qualities which distinguish Chatham as a desirable community, and specifically preserving for the present and future inhabitants of Chatham of the natural, architectural, and historic assets of the community. Granting this special permit does all three of those things. Views of Chatham Harbor are a natural asset and they will be enhanced. The architectural grace and style of the Joshua Burse House will be preserved, and the historic importance of the windmill will be preserved. All of those goals are served by this proposal. So in light of the criteria and the plans, I think you can approve the special permit, find that it is not at all detrimental and is instead a positive improvement for the community. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Please raise your hand if so. Seeing none, I have 7 letters to read. First one received on July 17th from Erwin Stockwell. No, Stockel. He lives at 157 Shore Road, directly across the street from 162 Shore Road. He wants to thank the petitioner for reaching out to his family and neighborhood at large and agreeing to a condition to improve the existing streetscape and enhance public and neighborhood views and vistas of Chatham Harbor. The historic salt box and windmill are as a condition of the special permit. With this condition in place, our family is in full support of the proposed redevelopment of the property and the issuance of the requested special permit. Next, we have a letter from our health agent, Judith Giorgio, dated 7/16/2024. She's reviewed the plan to add a renovate and relocate parts of the dwelling and adjacent structures. The property was approved for 5 bedrooms by the Board of Health in 2006 and is deed restricted. The windmill is approved as a home office studio only. The plan does not appear to add any additional septic flow. However, the dwelling and pool area encroach on the existing tanks. A plan must be submitted to the Health Department locating the new tank. A permit must be issued prior to construction. Next, we have a letter dated July 9th, 2024 from the Conservation Commission. And they tell us that as to 162 Shore Road, the applicant submitted a notice of intent that was heard on October 4th, 2023, and 11/8/2023. The project was continued to August 7th, 2024, to allow time for the applicant to apply to Historic and ZBA for approval of the project. The project will be revised and conditioned to meet the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act. Next, we have a letter from Christina Bassett from the Historical Commission, dated June 24th, 2024. And that says that the commission found the home historically significant, but the changes do not materially diminish its historical significance, so therefore, they did not impose a demolition delay. Next, we have a letter from Tamara Basil from July 15th, 2024. She writes that we own the property at 146 Shore Road, adjacent to 162. We are writing in support of the application of our neighbors, Michelle and Tom Jennings, to preserve and enhance the antique softbox house and move the windmill while building a new home at 162 Shore Road. We think the project is sensitive to the location, to our neighborhood, and to the need to preserve the softbox and windmill. We are also pleased that the salt box will be clearly visible from Shore Road and that the windmill and water will be more visible from the street as they are currently blocked by a hedge along Shore Road. We support the request and encourage you to approve the proposal. Next, we have a letter dated July 12th, 2024 from Michael Baker, 166 Shore Road, a budding homeowner. He says that he's a longtime owner of the property located at 166 Shore Road, quotations, the Sandbox, and he is an abutter to 162. Tom and Michelle Jenner have shared their plans with me, and I very much support what they are proposing. I watched several years ago as Tom and Michelle purchased, restored, and modestly expanded the home at 154 after it had been abandoned for a decade. The Jenners did a wonderful, thoughtful, considerate job on that restoration, and I believe they will do the same to the abutting property at 162, as their plans clearly indicate. The property now in question, 162, had been in the same family for 100 years and had unfortunately been neglected over recent decades. It was a virtual ruin when Tom and Michelle bought it a year or two ago, and quite frankly, I think they might be the only people in the state who would go to the trouble to preserve, move, and restore the original softbox and windmill house now on the property. Anyone else, most certainly any developer, would tear these two structures down and likely build a monstrosity in their place. Instead, the Jenners plan will restore the structures, worth preserving and improving, while building a modestly sized, low-to-the-ground new home that fits perfectly into the existing landscape. In short, the Jenners plans are more than the best I could hope for as an abutter, and the town will also be well served by approving the Jenners plans as presented. Next, we have a letter from Greg Brown. He says that he resides at 132 Shore Road. This is Anna and Greg Brown. And close abutters, they've seen the plans to move the existing house and windmill and build a new home. And they write in support of the application. Michelle and Tom's willingness to take the extra care in preserving the windmill and the original portion of the existing house is to be commended, and their plans reflect a sensitivity to our neighborhood. We support this request, which is not at all detrimental to our neighborhood, and encourage the Board of Appeals to approve the special permit. That concludes the letters. Is there anybody here or on Microsoft Teams that has a question or wishes to speak against this application? If so, please indicate. Seeing none. Questions from the board? Lee?
I don't have any questions. Everything's been covered very well.
Very good. Steve?
Just a couple of questions, and mostly pertaining to the studio. Are there any changes being made to the studio other than just moving it?
Well, as Tom indicated, and I'll let Mr. McNeil join me, as Tom indicated, the blades are being reconfigured. There is an addition on the end of it, and I don't think we're going to be, well, you can come up and speak, because they're your plans.
Yeah, so there's an addition that's on the original windmill. And what we're doing is we're just shifting or modifying a door on that section of the windmill. We're also adding some windows into the original part of the windmill, so they better match historic windmills in the town. That's our hope. So we want it to look more authentic.
And we did have discussions with the Historical Commission about those replacement windows, and they approved of them.
And are there utilities being brought to the windmill?
It currently has utilities, it has power and so forth,
Okay.
but there's not going to be, there's no bathroom in there. That's right, the half bath?
There's a half bath.
There's a half bath, and that will be retained. It'll be largely a pool house is what it's going to become, or not largely, but to a degree.
Yeah.
All right, but it's not going to be able to support any sort of habitation? other than-
Absolutely not a bedroom. The Jenningses understand that this is a 5-bedroom property, period.
Okay.
They knew that when they bought it 4 years ago, and they're going to honor that. They have no choice.
All right, thank you, that's it, thank you.
David Nixon, questions?
No questions.
And Ed Acton?
No questions.
David Veach?
No, it's the only thing looking at the renderings and things, and I wasn't paying close enough attention to this, but is the proposal to, there's an existing driveway on the property. Is the proposal to shift that driveway, that driveway doesn't stay, does that stay for the Jennings other property?
Oddly
or-
enough, the property driveway is not on the
It's
property.
not on their property,
The
right?
property itself, the current driveway is a right-of-way on property which Tom and Michelle happen to
Right,
own.
right,
That
yeah.
belongs to 154.
Right.
So 154 will, well, the Jennings still own it, but they may not own it forever. That will have its own driveway. We will have I think it's portrayed as Cohog Shell's driveway on the property.
So a little further.
A little further to the north
north,
from where
yeah.
it is now.
So you're gonna have actually a couple of driveways also providing view, as part of the view corridor.
That is
In
correct. Yeah,
addition-
as shown to the left of the cursor, the
Right.
driveway is coming in there.
Right, in addition to the restrictions on plantings as
Correct.
proposed and things to help enhance the view, yeah. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks, Randy.
So I just was wondering, if they're hooked up to the sewer, they're still limited to the 5 bedrooms?
This will be hooked up to sewer when Sarah's unborn grandchildren are senior citizens. Having said that, the nitrogen loading regulations do not apply to properties on municipal sewer, but this is not any time even in the predicted future.
Okay, like your enthusiasm. All right, so now, Dave?
Yeah, I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Nixon?
I second that and vote yes.
And
And
David?
Veach votes yes.
And Steve?
I vote yes.
And Lee?
I vote yes.
As do I. So deliberations. I think I'll do the same thing. Start with Lee again.
Okay. Well, this is a beautiful spot. It's, I think it's going to be a great project. It's a big project. I really commend the Jennings for even taking this on. I really appreciate the fact that they are preserving and celebrating the history of the salt box and moving it to the road. I am always in favor of, kind of celebrating the historical structures in town. I think the lot is large enough, so meets criteria number one for sure. It's to accommodate all three of the structures. And I also like the view of the house from the water. I appreciate the, the reducing the mass, kind of minimizing the scale. I think it's going to look great from both the street and the water, and certainly not substantially more detrimental. So I will approve this one.
Okay, very good. Steve?
Well, I agree with everything that Lee just said. I most appreciate the fact that you're going to be restoring or maintaining the original house. And I think it's a great project, and, thank you for sharing your gem with the rest of Chatham.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dave Nixon?
I'm most impressed by the thoughtfulness of your client, Mr. Litchfield. Not only from the views of the windmill, the water, and the whole 9 yards. It's, when I went out there, I didn't realize that. I was just kind of looking at how these things are going to be dispersed around and all that, but with your explanation and also the gentleman you brought with you, this is beyond expectations, and I hope it's something that others want to emulate.
Very good. And Ed Acton, deliberations?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm not voting today, but I think it's very well thought out. I like the fact that it preserves some of the history of Chatham. It opens up the views, and it certainly meets all of our criteria.
And David Beach?
Yeah, I agree with all the previous, they're really an extraordinary job. And I was, as I recall, Bill, wasn't there a time when the previous owners of the property actually considered replacing the old house, and they were convinced to save it?
I'm not supposed to speak, but you asked my question.
Yeah, that's good.
I have in my file, in case I need it, what was proposed 20 years ago to
Right.
make us look extraordinarily good.
Yeah, yes, yeah, so it was great to see the house saved at that point. And then I was much saddened to see the hedge put up there. I kind of felt like the whole town lost something at that point. So I very much commend the Jennings for rectifying that situation and putting the old salt box up there where it's more prominent. I'm sure I forgot to ask some questions about the restoration. I'm sure they'll do a very good job with the restoration of the house as well, given that, looking like the windows were probably all replaced at some point, and some of them in maybe not the best way, but I'm sure they'll do a good job with all of that. And so I'm very enthusiastically supporting this. I think it really, this is a response that this property deserves. And thank you.
Thank you.
So I will support it.
And I agree with all my colleagues, and I just think that the owners are humble and kind. They're not even putting the large house to showcase and show off. You can't even see it. So I'm touched by that. And I think it's the best project I've seen since I've been on the board. So thank you for your presentation, and
Thank you.
Dave?
So, well, I guess then with the question about, about conditions, Bill, what's your input on as far as our standing
Yeah,
conditions?
thank you, if I could, Madam Chairman. We obviously wanted the condition we proposed. In terms of the so-called usual conditions, Tom and Michelle don't want to bother their neighbors. So we would accept a June 30th Labor Day, no exterior construction. Sometimes, and Mr. Semple usually reads it,
Yeah.
is there an hourly limit in the off-season as part of the standard? I didn't think so.
No, those tend to fall, when the standard ones fall between June 30th and Labor
Right,
Day.
and we could accept that, but there won't be any exterior construction during the summer months. We'd like, however, in order to get it buttoned up by June 30th, to probably start at, 5 a.m. and work till 5 p.m. I think the nearest abutter on a year-round basis lives in New York. The Basils live in Atlanta.
Right.
There's nobody else in the well, Tom and Michelle live in Wellesley, but there's nobody else in the neighborhood.
So, but during the summer season, we usually have the hourly but in the rest of the season, they
Yeah,
follow whatever
thank
the
you.
town guidelines are.
Yeah, I was just about to say, excuse me, that the town guidelines are not going to support a 5 AM start.
I understand that. I understand that. It was an overstatement.
So I will move approval of application number 24-071 as presented by the applicant, with the conditions that all construction activity and vehicles should be contained on site or at a neighboring property with permission of the property owner, and that between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed. No work will be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity between 8 AM and 5 PM only. In addition to that, we would incorporate the conditions that Bill read and suggested, which all of us have seen and read and agreed to. So I will make that motion.
Very good.
I would suggest that we not burden these folks with our usual conditions. The extent that they have gone to, I think it gives them a pass. They're not going to do these things to bother their neighbors. They're just not going to do it. And I honestly think we only need the conditions that were laid out by Mr. Litchfield, that the rest of them, we should just leave alone.
Well, you know, Dave, I agree with you on that, actually. I mean, really, they've certainly demonstrated enough concern that we don't need to. So I will withdraw that part of my motion.
Okay.
And we will just go with the conditions as proposed by
And
the,
I'd just like to check, like I've learned from the best. Does anybody else have a problem with that, or are you okay with that, Ed?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and Steve?
I'm fine.
And Lee?
I personally like the summer conditions.
Yeah, and I don't, so, sorry. Okay, we'll go for it.
oh, so I will reiterate the motion to approve application number 24-071 as presented with the conditions, the list of conditions that Bill Litchfield read and we have all seen and agreed to.
Okay.
I second that and vote
Yeah,
yes.
and Dave?
Veach votes yes.
And Steve?
Steve DeBoer votes yes.
And Lee?
I vote yes.
As do I.
Thank you very much.
And that was unanimous, for the record. Okay, moving along to 230 Barcliff Avenue, Robert and Dina Young. And that's going to be Mr. Norcross after Sarah reads the advertisement.
Application number 24-069, Robert and Dina Young, care of James M. Norcross Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 230 Barcliff Avenue, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14G, Block 71, Lot 10. The applicant proposes to change, alter, or expand a conforming dwelling on a non-conforming garage on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and garage and the construction of a new dwelling and garage. The proposed dwelling and garage will comply with all bulk and dimensional requirements of the bylaw, but is considered a substantial alteration, and under the second except clause of Section 6 of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, such substantial alteration requires the grant of a special permit. The existing building coverage is 1,698 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 2,767 square feet, where 2,900 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 23,215 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Mr. Norcross, Attorney Norcross, and I presume that's Robert Young, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Jamie Norcross representing Bob, and Bob's wife Donna is with us today in the red and white shirt in the audience. The Youngs purchased this property about a year and a half ago, but they've owned properties in Chatham going back almost 25 years now. And they have two adult children with the prospects of an expanding family in the not-too-distant future is their hope. And so a couple years ago, they started looking for a property in town that they could really create more of a homestead property where all the family could come and stay And Bob and Donna had previously owned in this neighborhood on the other side of Old Harbor, really loved this neighborhood, and so when this property came on the market, they were excited to be able to purchase it. And Bob and Donna, who own a construction business in New York, are very familiar with the process, so they quickly got to work at looking at how they could create additional living area at the property, whether through a renovation addition or a full rebuild. And so, for a number of reasons, which Bob can explain as well, the rebuild became the better option for them and for their family. And so the proposal is to demolish the existing 4-bedroom house and the rear detached garage and replace it with a new 4-bedroom house and a new detached garage also at the rear of the property. They liked that style with the separate garage. They thought that had to maintain a nice look in terms of some of the historic character of the property. It's similar to a lot of the other properties in this area that have a separate structure on the property. And as a helpful byproduct, it also helps in assists in reducing the mass of the project as well by having the separate garage structure at the back that's behind the proposed single-family house. Before going into the numbers, I was going to ask Bob to run through his thought process on the design and some of the architectural features.
Thank you very much for allowing us to present today. We're excited about the location of this property for us and our family. And if I can go through, we purposely designed the house to limit its scale. In particular, the main ridge is set 2 feet lower than what's allowed under current zoning. Also, the right side gable, a little bit hard to see in this two-dimensional model, but that gable on the right-hand side is approximately 2 to 3 feet lower than the ridge. Yep. There's multiple copies. There's multiple
I'm
copies.
sorry, there's
there.
just one. If you don't mind passing those around.
Picture's worth 1,000 words. Do I have enough? So you can see in the three-dimensional model a little bit better where the main ridge, again, is 2 feet lower than what's allowed, and the right-hand gable is approximately 2 feet, 3 feet lower than the main ridge and set back from the front elevation of the house. In addition, the left side gable is approximately 4 to 5 feet lower than the main ridge, also reducing the scale of the house as you from the front from Barcliff. We purposely created the shed dormers on the sides of the gable to give it more character, more sight lines, and to reduce the overall scale. The first floor elevation of the ceilings is 9 foot. Second floors are 8 foot, thereby allowing us to keep the height of the house a little bit lower. And although the house is about approximately 1,000 square feet larger than the previous house, some of that, as required in the calculation, is to include areas such as the front porch, the overhangs. So the actual physical size of the house is not indicative of the 1,062 square feet larger than the previous home. We do like the idea of keeping the, I don't like driving down streets and seeing garages in the front, especially in this location. So we like the idea of having the garage, and the doors are also facing on the side, on the side of the garage where the current garage is also, the doors are facing Barcliff. So it really gives the impression that there's an old barn back there. Open for questions.
We'll get to that.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Just to touch on some of the numbers, it's a fairly large lot for this area. It's over 23,000 square feet. It is non-conforming because this is an R40 zoning district. We also have over 100 feet of frontage, but 150 feet is required, so we are a bit shy in terms of conforming with regard to frontage. The existing garage is non-conforming as it's located 13.5 feet from the north lot line and 19.8 feet from the east lot line where 25-foot setbacks is required. The proposed house and garage will meet all dimensional setbacks. It's going to be below the maximum building coverage and will be below the height requirement. In terms of building coverage, it is a fairly substantial increase. We're going from 7.3% to 11.9%. That is still below the 12.5% maximum allowed for this zoning district and includes both the house and the detached garage in that calculation. Our proposed setback is 40.5 feet, so we comply with the 40-foot setback required in an R40 zone, which is, I think, a bit unusual for this neighborhood when many are in fact closer than the 40 feet. And then in terms of our height, the existing height is 23.5 feet and the proposed height will be 28.2 feet. So moving along to the criteria. Number one, adequacy of the site in terms of size for the proposed use. As I mentioned, this is one of the larger lots in the neighborhood with over 23,000 square feet of area. The proposed house and garage will meet all dimensional setbacks and will be below the 12.5 maximum building coverage allowed for the property. Compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. The neighborhood, as you drive through, you'll see is a real mixture of different size homes and different size lots. I provided a comparison of gross floor area numbers for the project, and I think it demonstrates that the overall size is actually consistent with a number of properties along Barcliff Avenue, in particular those properties that are located closer to Old Harbor Road. This is a location where I think it's a bit hard to determine the neighborhood as you're going through and doing that gross floor area analysis because you can go really 4 directions. So I kind of went from Dairy Street over to Old Harbor, and I thought as you drive down, that's really the neighborhood, in my opinion at least, for this property. And so we included some numbers for properties that abut on Cod Lane, which are smaller, but as you get closer to Old Harbor, I think our numbers are actually pretty consistent with some, especially those at the end, and we have a larger lot than most of those properties. I'd also point out that in terms of our gross floor area number, almost 2,000 square feet comprises the basement and the detached garage. And finally, by maintaining a separate structure that is located behind the main house, at least as viewed from Barcliff, it further reduces the impact of that additional square footage. On the, it wasn't on the version of the gross floor area analysis that I emailed to Sarah yesterday, but on the version I handed out, I added today, was going through and looking up the number of stories as listed by the assessor for all those properties, as we have essentially a 2-story. And you'll see, as I discovered, there's a number of 2-story properties that are included in this area. Ones that are considered 1.9, 1.95, which I would say is essentially 1.85. So again, I think by adding the second story, we're still consistent with the neighborhood. Extent of the proposed increase in nonconforming nature of the structure or use. The lot is not conforming, and therefore the increase in living area does constitute an increase in the nonconforming nature of the structure. However, there's no other nonconformities proposed by this project, and we're actually removing 2 current dimensional nonconformities. Suitability of the site. Site is suitable for the project and the rebuild. It'll have no negative impact on neighboring properties or on the natural environment. Impact of scale, setting, and mass on neighborhood visual character. We'd suggest the project will not have a negative impact on neighborhood visual character. The size of the home is undoubtedly increasing, but I think this is mitigated by several factors. First, as I mentioned, the home will be set back over 40 feet from Barcliff Avenue, which I think alleviates concerns relative to the structure overwhelming the streetscape. This is also a situation where it's about a 10 to 15 foot difference between the traveled surface and the lot line. So as you drive by, it's probably closer to 50, 55 feet setback from Barcliff Avenue. And the setback at 40 feet, as measured from the lot line, I think is, as you drive around there, seems to be further away than many of the other homes. And as mentioned by Bob, the design utilizes the dormers to further reduce the massing while allowing for the increased area on the second story. So again, even though it is larger, we think it is still compatible with neighboring properties and doesn't negatively impact on views and vistas. Number 6, it's a residential use in a residential neighborhood. Number 7, we have adequate water and drainage. A new septic system will be installed as part of the project. 8 and 9, no impact, negative impact on traffic flow and safety. There'll be no noise and litter. have adequate utilities, and 11 and 12 are not applicable in this case. So just briefly to sum up, again, it's a change, but we think it's a change that's compatible with the neighborhood. I think it's consistent with a lot of the projects that have taken place in the area, and we certainly don't think it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I will read the two correspondences. One is from Judith Giorgio, dated 7/16/2024. She reviewed the proposed plan for the property. The existing property has 5 bedrooms, and the proposed dwelling will maintain the 5-bedroom layout. A new septic system is proposed. Plans for the new septic system must be submitted and permit issued prior to the construction of the proposed property. Then we have a note from Christina Bassett from the Historical Commission. They found the house to be historically significant and that the changes do materially diminish the home's historic significance. They imposed an 18-month demolition delay in July of 2023 that is set to expire January 18th, 2025, and we received that on July 16th, 2024. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against the application or has a specific question? Seeing none, would you like to respond to that 18-month delay?
I can touch on it briefly. Once Bob and Donna determined that the rebuild was the avenue they were going to pursue, we filed the demolition delay about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, before they had plans done, and based on the age, and it was had a Form B, so the Historical Commission determined it was historically significant and imposed a demo delay. So they haven't seen these plans. We didn't think it would necessarily change their, as it's a demolition as opposed to a remodel, I don't think it was really going to change their determination. So we did not go back to them with the revised plans.
Okay.
Or the plans in general. It was just, we just went to them saying we're planning to demolish because we didn't have plans yet, and that's where they issued the.
So they almost had no choice but to say.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I would say,
All right,
yeah.
good enough. Questions from the board? Dave Veach?
Yeah, so let me just preface my questions are, I'm just curious, and then, because this is not really zoning related, but I'm just curious about the trees, some of the trees on the property that look like they're gonna be lost in the process, and I wondered if you'd given thought to finding ways to do things that you weren't gonna eliminate in some of those trees.
Thank you for bringing that up. There is a large beech tree in the front yard
Yeah.
that we're going to talk with our civil engineer to see if we could remove the septic system. And my wife and I decided that, let's see if we could do with this turnaround, whether or not we could move it or eliminate it and save that beech tree.
Yeah,
'cause
that was my question.
That one-
That would be great if you could do that. That's a gorgeous tree.
that one beech tree is important, I think.
And then there is another beech tree in the back, but it looks like that's too close to the
Yeah,
proposed
yeah.
house.
There's another maple far back, but I think that's outside the back of the
Do you
new
think,
garage.
yeah, I just kind of wanted to show the new garage being kind of close to that maple
Yeah.
back there. But, again, this isn't a zoning consideration, but I happen to be out there on one of these really hot days, and I went, shade is an important consideration. That's all I have, thanks.
And I had, sorry, just real quick, I had a chance to talk to Thad before in the hallway, and he said he's confident they can put the septic on a different location, so.
I think that would be a great thing to
Yep.
do, honestly, yeah.
What about the driveway?
Mr. Young said they could.
We'll do something with that turnaround or eliminate it if
Okay,
we
we'll
have
go
to.
back to it. Thank
Yep.
you. Questions? Ed Acton?
Sure. I'm just curious, the bathroom off of the garage, I'm just wondering what the purpose of that is, or what the thought is
Just,
behind that.
when you come home and you're parking in your detached garage and you gotta go, you gotta go. It just makes it that much quicker.
Good enough. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go to Dave Nixon.
Thank you. I have no questions.
Steve, questions?
Just one, is there any living quarters planned for above the garage, or is?
No.
None.
No.
Okay.
That was a consideration at one point, but again, when they're trying to sort of tailor things a bit, they decided just to use that purely for a garage. I think there's attic space above, but no
Okay.
living space.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
And Lee?
My question was about the tree as well, because it's beautiful. So I'm happy to hear that you're going to try to save it and work around it. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know I was concerned about the tree too, and I'm hoping that we're gonna condition it, that you save that tree. Would that work for you?
No problem.
And I do
We're
see it
we're
as
also,
part.
we're also special attached to beech trees for other
Yeah.
reasons, personal
Great,
reasons.
great.
But that tree's in, as of today, when I went there, because I hadn't seen it since the last time we were here, it looks very healthy.
It does, because I do see that as part of our criteria. The impact of scale sighting and mass on neighborhood visual character, and also the attention to the environment. So I do see it as part of it, so. Okay, so at this point, we'll close the hearing.
Yeah, I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
I second that and say yes.
Beach votes yes.
Steve?
Steve votes yes?
Lee?
I vote yes.
As do I. Okay, deliberations. Dave Nixon.
I have no concerns whatsoever about this. I understand your wish to make a more modern, bigger home. I understand that, and this lot can handle it. So I have no concerns.
Okay, and Ed Acton, deliberations?
Yeah, you do have one of the larger lots in the area, so it certainly seems like this design, with the detached garage, the bathroom off the detached garage, maybe that would support a pool later, perhaps, you know. So I have no problem with this. I think it meets our criteria. Thank you.
Yep, Dave Beach?
Yeah, I could understand, looking at the house that's there, I could understand a desire to replace it and start anew. And I think the design honors the house that's there, and it's actually a very nice design. I think that the lot can support it, as others have said. It's certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It's an improvement and meets up our criteria. We'll support it.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, I'm glad to see that that the setbacks are being corrected for the most part, and it's not overmassing the property. It's a great design. Thank you for this picture. This helps a lot. You know, and it's a nice design that makes it sort of blend into the neighborhood, so I think it would be a big asset.
Yes, and Lee?
I agree with my colleagues. It's a great project. It meets our criteria and will be a great addition to the neighborhood.
Yep, and I agree with everything. I'm really honored that you're willing to save the tree. And I'm looking at this property in your hands as a blessing, because this could have gone another way, as we all know. If it was another person, we could have had 3 or 4 hearings on this. And, but this was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, now let's talk about conditions
Conditions,
here. I mean, the first thing comes to mind for me is, given the demolition delay that's been imposed on them, what are our feelings about, our summer work conditions? And Jamie, I'm open to what your thoughts are, or Bob,
Yeah, I mean, we would, again, I guess worst case, the demo delay won't be reduced at all. So I think we would like to be able to do some work in the summertime. I mean, it is a very large lot, certainly plenty of room for the vehicles. It's pretty well screened with vegetation from neighboring properties as well. So, I mean, that area is tight, but I think that particular spot where we are is a little bit more open than others. So if the board would consider that, I think we'd like to do, again, maybe perhaps with restricted hours, but
not
not a full
perhaps allowing exterior construction during that time period.
But you still have to go to historic, and how long does that take for them to, if they
What does
reduce-
everybody else think of
I think
that?
they'll- if
Steve,
they
what do you
reduce
think?
it, they
Well,
don't-
There should be summer restrictions? Full?
Yeah, but
We could
I'm
probably
not
get
sure
the
they
house up
can
by
do
June.
anything until January.
Yeah.
Well, they can't, so it will be next year,
Right.
next summer.
Next, the
Right.
following summer.
If I may.
Yes,
if
go ahead.
If the historic board, and we go to them, or we wait until January, we could have our permits, our plans ready to go for submission to the building department for approval. And I would think that we could probably get, the house constructed, by June.
The whole thing?
And be able to work inside like you did on the previous application.
Okay, well, we can still, so are you opposed to the summer restrictions or not? You'd rather not have them? Okay, we're just gonna see what everybody thinks of that, because this is not the same neighborhood as the other one, so everybody's an individual.
But big noise, digging and, hammer and nails, that kind of stuff, we suspect we could get the house up by summer.
Yep, no, sounds good. Lee, you want the summer restrictions?
I normally like them. I think this lot is big enough. I think if they start in January, then I agree. I think they can probably get the exterior done by June.
But if they don't?
But if they don't, I don't know, I'll wait and hear whatever you want, whatever,
That's okay,
yeah,
yeah.
what everyone else has to think,
All right, Dave.
has to say.
All right, so you want the restrictions? for
Yes.
summer? Okay,
Yep.
got it. Dave, Ed Acton, your thoughts on that?
I feel the lot is large enough, and I feel like we should spread the wealth of construction to everyone, not just the summer residents.
Yeah, for sure. Dave Veach, what do you think?
Yeah, I think in this case, that I'd like to keep the timing of, the work timing in summer. I'd like to impose conditions on that, but I try to look for the times where we don't need to have the exterior construction. And I think this is one of them. I can go either way. If we were to impose it, we can certainly revisit it if they, for supply chain issues or something got hung up, it could come to us to take it off.
You can always do that.
you know.
They can always try.
We can always
try.
do that.
I think we should vote on this one, because this is Barcliff, and we've heard a lot of war stories about Barcliff, and so this is one of the streets where I think there's a concern. And so, why don't we vote? Who wants full summer restrictions? We'll just do a raise your hand vote.
Oh, okay.
Who wants that?
I can go along with it.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna do that.
And then, just to clarify, with respect to the tree, Randy, did you want to make?
Oh, yes, and also that you do not take down the beech tree. I'm not sure how we should phrase that. It's the first time I've ventured on this one.
Are there two in the front yard or just
One.
was this
One beech tree.
I guess the beech tree in the front of the house.
I mean,
So-
as long as but I think wouldn't we sort of qualify that that it be determined to be a healthy tree by an arborist or something? I'm just, rather than a blanket, I'm.
How about unless and until an arborist said that it's on its way out?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So unless and until an arborist opined that it's basically dying,
Yep.
or really dying, imminent death.
It looks too healthy.
It looks very healthy, yeah, so, okay, do that.
So, okay, so I will move for approval of application number 24-069 as presented with the following conditions. That all construction activity in vehicles be contained on site or at a neighboring property with permission of the property owner. Between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed. No work should be permitted on the weekends. Construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only. Now, with respect to the
Beech tree.
beech tree, the beech tree in the front yard, that the tree shall remain unless an arborist
Distress.
stressed, or it's,
Well, Sarah can,
it's.
Sarah will come up.
Sarah will go, okay.
The beech tree at the front of the property shall be preserved unless and until determined by an arborist that it cannot be saved.
Okay,
Yep, that's okay with Mr. Young.
all right, fair enough. Okay, so let's vote.
Well,
Oh, second, Dave Nixon
I second that, and I vote yes.
and Dave Veach.
and Veach votes yes.
Steve
Steve DeBoer votes yes.
and Lee,
I vote yes.
as do I. It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I hope not. His ways. Next application is going to be 68 Squanto Drive, when Sarah's ready to read the ad.
Application number 24-072. Louis Hosmer, Christopher Halsner, and Janice Halsner Fields, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 68 Squanto Drive, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 10C, Block 23, Lot E2. The applicant proposes to change, alter, or expand a non-conforming exterior mechanical system appliance and on a non-conforming lot via the installation of an additional exterior mechanical system appliance. The existing AC condenser is non-conforming in that it is located 14.1 feet from the easterly abutter. The proposed generator will be non-conforming in that it will be located 12 feet from the easterly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. Also proposed is the reconfiguration of the existing coastal stairway. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 15,060 square feet where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Attorney Litchfield, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Bill Litchfield, here on behalf of the Holzner family who own 68 Squanto Drive. When I was passing out paperwork, I said sort of sotto voce that I could get this done in 4 minutes, and one member went like that. I don't think it was V for victory either. But this is a very simple request. We have existing air conditioning compressors on the east side of the property. Adjacent to them, we would like to locate an emergency generator. We looked at all sorts of other locations. This is the ideal one. The other change is hardly noticeable. We want to reconfigure the top of the stairs, angle it a little bit closer to the house itself rather than the neighbor's house. So that'll go into the criteria as to adequacy of site. I think you can find it to be adequate for the minor reconfiguration of the top of the stairs, the installation of the emergency generator. There's no size at issue for either the generator or the stairs. The extent of increase is 2.1 feet, but as you know from having been out there, it's hidden by a hedge, and again, it's adjacent to the existing compressors, and it only runs during power outages. As to suitability, it's been reviewed favorably of the Conservation Commission. They already issued an order of conditions, which they don't ordinarily do before they hear from you. There's no scale siting mass at issue, no change in use, which is residential. And as to noise, except for weekly testing, the generator only operates during power failures. And I actually have the decibel rating here, it's very low. So I think that you can find that the proposed changes are not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood, and that the proposal warrants the grant of a special permit.
Thank you. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please make it known. Seeing none, I will read the one correspondence from the Conservation Commission dated July 9th, 2024. Let's see. The applicant submitted a notice of intent. It was heard by the commission on May 1, 2024. The project was issued in order conditions on May 22, 2024. It was revised and conditioned to meet the performance standards under the Wetland Protection Act. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? Seeing none. Are there any questions from the board? We'll do this one plenary. No. No. Okay. We'll have a motion.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
I second that and vote yes.
Veach votes yes.
Steve?
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
As do I. Okay, deliberations. Lee?
I don't have any issues with this. I think that since the AC condensers are still there, are already there, it's fine, I mean, to put the generator there, and I think it's a very modest change to the stairway. I don't see any problems. It is a great spot.
Yes, it is. Steve?
I don't have any issues. I think it's a good plan.
All right, very good. Dave Veach?
Not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It meets our criteria. We'll support it.
Very good. And Ed?
All good with me.
Dave
It's
Nixon?
our criteria.
All right, I agree with everybody. And so, do we need any conditions? No? Okay,
think we need
let's just,
So I will, find my paper here. I will move to
approve the application as
approve the
submitted?
application as submitted.
Very good.
I second that and vote yes.
And Veach votes yes.
Steve DeVore votes yes.
I vote yes.
As do I, it's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That was about 4 minutes, I think you were. You did good. All right. Last but not least, we have the treehouse on 19 Nelly's Way. When Sarah's ready, she will read that application.
Application number 24-073, Paul Angelico, care of Thad Eldridge, 1038 Main Street, Chatham, Mass. 02633, owner of property located at 19 Nelly's Way. Also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 6E, Block 39DB, Lot R5. The applicant proposes to change, alter, or expand a nonconforming accessory structure on a nonconforming lot via the enclosure of the underside of the treehouse. The accessory structure will remain nonconforming, located 5 feet from the southerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required, and will remain 22.1 feet tall where 12 feet is the maximum allowed. The building coverage will remain non-conforming at 3,051 square feet, where 2,900 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot contains 23,464 square feet in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the bylaw.
Mr. Eldridge, welcome.
Good afternoon. For the record, Thad Eldridge, East Southeast. The property owners are in the audience. Paul and Kelly are in the back here. So we have the treehouse. This is one of the most unique structures that we have in town. I did add some of the history on it. And to add a little more history, Paul used to own our child's house, and now he's bought Kevin McDonald's old house. So better watch out, Jay. He's after your house next. So Paul has things. He needs a little more storage room. He'd like to put up a garden shed. And rather than putting another structure on the property, the idea is to simply enclose what's below. That will take away the odd mock tree that's underneath, the tangle of structural members, and replace it with a solid clapboard walling, a couple of windows, and a couple of doors. So just to share, the treehouse itself, Kevin had built that for his grandchildren. As I lived down the road, my son and daughter spent many hours with Kevin's grandchildren, sliding down the slide and spraying the hoses and having a bunch of fun up there. So this definitely passes the kid test. When their grandchildren are old enough, they'll have a great time on it. The building coverage will increase slightly. Originally, this property was in a split zone, and it was conforming when Kevin built it, but it is no longer conforming now as we change the R20 zoning district, or change the SB to R20 zoning. There are no sheds in the immediate area, nor are there tree houses, but we are just taking a unique building and making it slightly more unique. We're maintaining the same setbacks, a little bit of increase in the coverage because we would like to enclose below the deck, making about 150 square feet of enclosure. We really have no views or vistas to worry about. We are proposing arborvitae, and I can say that this site plan was done prior to the applicants planting a number of arborvitaes around the property to increase screening. So they're not shy about planting vegetation to screen. And what they did plant was pretty large. Compatibility, we're residential. The other criteria really do not apply. We have set out, we've worked with all of the neighbors, we've contacted all of the neighbors. One letter that was in the file as of Tuesday. That was one positive letter from Dan Campanero, who's to the south. We did talk with the West Chatham condo early on, and the board wanted to remain neutral, but they would allow the condominium owners for their own opinions that we're not sure of. We have proposed arborvitae screening on both those sides to help protect and block, and otherwise we're open to questions.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate. Seeing none, I will read the three correspondences. Number one, there's a letter from Judith Giorgio on July 16th, 2024. She's our health agent, and she has no concerns about the shed treehouse structure. Then we have a note from the tax collector, and that was on July 1st, 2024. Attached is a parcel balance for as of today for 19 Nelly's Way, application 24-073, Paul Angelico, for their outstanding FYI 24 real estate tax. Thank you in advance for your time and assistance to this matter. Have a great day. Next we have, and so there's an amount on there that I don't need to read, that I know of. And then there is a note from Daniel Campanaro, and that was on 7/8/2024. He carefully reviewed the plans for the proposed garden tools shed to be built underneath the existing playhouse proposed by Paul Angelico at 19 Nelly's Way in Chatham. I live adjacent to the Angelico property at 12 Nelly's Way to the right of the property and facing the playhouse. With the proposed modification, I feel it will not pose any detriment of any kind. I believe the modification will enhance the look of the combined playhouse with shed structure, and that it will enclose the supporting framework and the playhouse consistent with style and architecture consistent with our Nelly's Way cul-de-sac. And that concludes those
And
correspondences.
if I may, the tax
Go right ahead.
collector's address has been updated, the tax bill has now
Very
been
good.
paid. It went elsewhere, so.
Good to know. So anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against the application or has any questions? Seeing none, questions from the board? Are there any? I can go one by one. Yes, Dave Nixon.
I like that treehouse the way it is.
Okay.
And, particularly the funky stuff underneath and all that. Wouldn't it be cost effective to figure out to put a shed someplace?
Where?
I don't know. That's my
That
question
was-
to you.
So, could you put the site plan up again, Sarah? Thank you. So, we looked at in here, putting a shed in front of the treehouse, and that would stick up in front of it. They really don't want one here because that takes away that little bit of lawn. Otherwise, we're looking over here, and that's already, that's a nice landscape bed, and that's the way to the basement access. There really was no room on the property that made any sense for a detached shed. We did review it. We went through as
I'm sure
many
you did.
options as we could.
I'm
and-
sure you did. It just struck me, gee, it's so much simpler, but can't happen. Or could. Just they don't want it to.
They prefer not to, because
Yeah,
now if you
okay.
put a shed in here, now you're looking at, if you put it parallel with the building, you're getting very close to the paved drive. It's no, they just don't want to. How's that?
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Will they be able to put the kids' toys in there?
They'll be able to put Paul's toys in there.
What do you mean if they have kids? No.
Yes, they'll be able to put kids' toys in there.
All right, very good, very good. All right, so, Dave Leach.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
I second that and vote yes.
And Veach votes yes.
And Steve?
Steve votes yes.
And
I vote
Lee?
yes.
Very good. And do I, deliberations, Steve?
I guess I was gonna ask a question, now that I'm just looking at this now. It says the proposed shed is 150 square feet. Is that, does that
So-
run afoul of our square footage for a shed?
Well, it would be an accessory structure rather than a shed at that point. So garden storage sheds get the reduced setback requirement and the exemption for coverage
Okay.
when they're 100 square feet or less. So this would just be an accessory structure, the residential use.
Okay.
Lee, deliberations?
I don't have any problem with this. I was looking as to where they might put a shed as well. I don't really see that many possible places. I mean, you don't want to take up the grass near the treehouse because that's a fun play area. So I don't really have any problem with this.
And Dave Nixon, deliberations?
No, I asked my question.
Okay, very good. And Ed?
No questions. Sorry.
No deliberations? Would you support it if you were voting?
If I was voting, yes, I'd support it. It's unique.
Yep, it is. Dave Leach?
Yeah, and I guess I would just comment that it will, I mean, it won't be, the finished product will not be as unique as the existing structure, but it also won't look like a generic shed.
No.
So I think it's a nice, I think it's an improvement to a certain degree, and it's certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, and it meets our criteria.
And I would say, too, that it doesn't start a trend of putting sheds in the middle of the street. And as a treehouse, it's very Chatham-esque. I had a slab of wood on a branch nailed in. That was my treehouse. So, yes, it's beautiful. All right, let's vote.
Did I move approval? No, okay, so I will move approval of the application, number 24-073, and I don't see any need for conditions on it, so.
I second and vote yes.
And Veach votes yes.
Steve votes yes.
I vote yes.
As do I, it's unanimous, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And Dave Nixon has an announcement to make before we close.
Yeah, I just want everyone to know that there will be a memorial service for Robert Hessler. The dates jump back and forth several times, but Mrs. Hessler has decided that it can be held on July 30th, which is a Tuesday, and it is going to be held at the Congregational Church on Main Street at the Rotary, and it will start at 11 o'clock.
Thank you. All right, so now we need a motion to, oh, what time is it? We do that first? All right, we do,
I move to adjourn.
okay, Dave? Second?
I second that.
And how do you vote?
Yes.
And Ed? You get to vote on that?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Veach votes yes.
Steve votes yes.
I vote yes.
as do I. What time is it?
4:39 PM.
All right, good night, Chatham.